If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Ivy.
So, we'll go ahead and jump on into our weekly updates here. Did you hear about Kanye?
Running for president.
Yeah. Which is just, it's really dumb. I mean, I guess the only reason why I would see him doing that, because he's a huge Trump supporter. The only benefit we could get from that is if he was running to take away some votes for Trump, and then that way, Biden would win because he'd have more, because the Trump votes would be split up between Kanye and Trump. But then again, Trump supporters typically are racist, so I don't see that benefiting anybody. No. But it's really stupid. He can't even run in...
like 8 states, I think.
Right. And so it's just, you know what? It's just another thing to get people talking about him again because he's not relevant.
Was he ever?
And here we are talking about him. So that shit worked. Fuck Kanye. And then...
Shitty clothing line.
I've been on here, I've been reading, like, my local news's... Facebook page a lot, and because we just got today, a couple of our counties are doing mandatory masks, which is mandated by the governor. We've got like a weird alert system that he started, and anyway, I get on the page and I just I'm going through like the weekly, just looking at the news and shit, and there's a whole ass article on there talking about these Siamese twins in Beaver Creek, Ohio died. And, bitch, I didn't even know there was Siamese twins.
I ain't never seen them.
Right. I mean, did they...
They were 68 years old, though, so...
I mean, did you read... Do you know anything about... Did you read anything about them?
I didn't, read the article, but...
Yeah, I didn't either. I just saw the headline, and I was just like, what? I'm so surprised. But, I mean, they were famous enough to make the local news, so...
Apparently, the community... came together and got him a house or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's in Beaver Creek of all places. Yeah. That's some shit. That's nice. Beaver Creek is expensive. Wow. I had no idea. I didn't know any of that. I probably have to look him up a little bit more, but I didn't. What do you do? I mean, gosh, what I want to know what they did for a living, like.
Probably nothing, girl. Well, the way that they were attached, you seen the picture, right?
They were like facing each other. Yeah. They look like they were attached from like the torso.
Like at the belly button.
Yeah,
or something.
like mid belly, and they were face to face. So then they have to walk sideways when they walk. The picture I saw, they were in like a wheelchair or something.
Yeah, some weird
But it could have been. I don't know if it's because they couldn't walk. Or
I didn't see their legs. They could have only had one set of legs, and not been able to walk because they wouldn't be able to support themselves.
Like two bodies coming out of one pelvis.
Yeah.
Is that how?
Maybe
they'd only have one penis then.
I don't know.
I wonder how many penises they had. Well, they were connected like front to front, so.
Well, I guess I don't know. What does like a conjoined twin, I guess that would have to be
I guess
two
I
bodies.
said Siamese twin. That's politically incorrect.
Yeah.
My bad. I apologize. But yeah, anyway, conjoined twin. What do you mean? Well, yeah, I mean, there's different. I mean, obviously different types of like conjoined twins. Like,
but if they're like coming out of the same trunk, essentially, does that still qualify them as a conjoined twin, because they're technically not two whole people?
Well, they're two whole personalities, so I don't know if that... and then it counts. There's the two-headed girl, and she's got...
But notice how you said she was a two-headed girl and not a conjoined twin?
Not the... Not the one-bodied girls. The two-headed girl. I guess that's a good point. Yeah, that's.
I don't know how that all works.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a really good question. But she had two heads and the one body, and so she had two. I remember she had two spines, like that led down, fed into like one conjoined spine, and then from the rest was.
What would you do if that was Maylee and it was her time?
If she had, oh god,
girl, they'd be fighting each other.
Oh my god, yeah, can you imagine? They'd probably kill each other. Well, one of them probably would have died in the womb.
So did one head control the body and the other one was just kind of there, like?
I think so. I don't really remember exactly. I'd have to really look into it. Maybe we should just do a whole episode on conjoined twins.
Yeah, let's do it.
And talk about. Well, we could do further on with our twin talk and talk about talk about conjoined twins.
My mom if her sister's left-handed.
Well, guys, you know what? If we do a twins episode, if you have any questions about twins, Ivy's mom is a twin and Ivy's stepdad is a twin. So we've got access to Ask a Twin. But yeah, I think that we should probably I think we should do that. I think it would be fun. I'd like to learn about some conjoined twins. It's something I haven't. I mean, I've looked into it before, but we could talk about like mutations and stuff too. We could throw in some other. Anyway, well,
is that offensive to call a conjoined twin a mutation?
No, genetic mutations are just science. That's a scientific term.
I don't know, girl. I'd be kind of offended.
But if you called a conjoined twin a mutant, then I think you're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, but see, I would take mutant much more gracefully. I would openly accept mutant over mutated.
Mutated, yeah. Well, but that's just, I believe that's just the proper scientific term is genetic mutation. So,
yeah, true.
I mean, I think that's like saying, people that are offended when you call it a vagina. I mean, yeah, there's people that exist that are, but it is a vagina. So, what are you going to do? Anyway, along the same lines of genetics, I kind of thought we would talk about the argument of nature versus nurture. That's something that I've been interested in for a while. I'm a big true crime person, and in the true crime world, I mean, that is something that people talk about a lot, especially when you talk about serial killers and things like that. So I mean, there is the argument: are people born evil? Are you born with inherent sets of traits? Actually, it was the reason why I got on the topic was actually not true crime related. It was discussing polyamory with somebody, and if polyamory is considered a sexual identity of some sort, or if it was a lifestyle choice. If you could make the choice to be polyamorous, and you do, and maybe you do that because of something that's happened in your life or the way that you've been raised, or if you're just born and destined to be polyamorous. But yeah, so that was something that kind of got me thinking about it. And it is a very, it is one of those things. Obviously there's a lot of divide on stuff like that. And then even the science, when you look it up, I mean, there's science to support that, it's an inherent genetic thing that happens, or not even just genetic, just, the makeup of your brain for whatever reason. But then there's also science to support that, the way that you're raised, is going to be, is plays a huge part in how, your makeup is. So, a lot of people think that, well, okay, I won't get into that yet. I'll say from my own personal experience, because we did kind of talk about my relationship dynamics and how I am, I don't feel like it is natural for me to not be polyamorous. I don't, just in the same way as I'm attracted to everybody. That's just what comes to me naturally. And I feel like if I weren't, I would be doing myself a disservice. I feel like I'd be missing out on something. Now, I have been through some very extreme sexual trauma, so it would make sense if I because of the way I was nurtured, I guess, you know, that would play a part into how I view sex and relationships and things like that. So, you know, I don't know. It's a weird thing because, again, I feel like that's just me and that's just who I am, and I can't make the conscious decision to change it.
Well, there is people that, you know, believe that monogamy is actually unnatural. But
which would make sense because as animals, we're just meant to, you know, eat shit and push out babies and, you know, that's it. You know, so, I mean, that does make sense to me. But then again...
There's species that are monogamous, though.
That's true. So why? So, like, do they make the conscious choice to do that? Because really...
because that's all they've ever known.
Right. Because really, I mean, our makeup is set up to mate with as many people as we possibly can. And not females. Women are not made that way, but men are made that way. But then, of course, you know, we have other things that, you know, prove that. I don't know if it would be considered a choice. Well, just like, you know, people are like, oh, gay is a choice, but it's really not. I mean, it's really not. So I don't know. Now, is it a conscious choice, or, you know, is it, you know, no. Could it be a subconscious thing that you don't realize that you were affected somehow and that's why you're that way? It could be, but can you change it? Probably not. I mean, why would you want to? You know, you're not hurting anybody by doing that. However, then it starts getting dangerous. Just like how sex offenders are typically people that, you know, were abused as children, and then they grow up to repeat that same behavior. There are child sex offenders, and what I mean by that is not people that, you know, not pedophiles, but people that are children that are sexual predators to other children because they don't know any different, and so therefore they end up preying on other kids and they don't know otherwise, and usually that's because they're acting out what they've already been taught. And so, you know, it's rough because personally, you know, going into the true crime and stuff like that, you know, I've seen a lot of cases where it's like, wow, that person, you know, they had a really fucked up childhood. Well, Eileen Wuornos, do you know anything about Eileen Wuornos? You know, she had a fucked up childhood, and then she started killing, you know, her Johns. Of course, some people don't think that, you know, because she says that she was raped by these people, and that's why she killed them. I don't think she was raped by all of them, or I don't think they attempted to rape her. I think that probably her first murder, I believe she was legitimately raped. I think she did go through something horrific, and at that point, she just snapped.
Yeah, like PTSD type stuff.
And it was over.
And that's her livelihood, so it's not like she had the choice of really doing anything else. Because, I mean, you look at her and she looks scary. Who the fuck is going to hire a bitch that looks like her? No, I'm just kidding. That's fucked up.
I mean, girl, a bunch of people did. She was, you know.
But, I mean, unfortunately, that's a part of our reality.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
You know, you go somewhere and people, like, judge people on their appearance by the services they provide. Yeah. Like car mechanics. Some people will go to somebody that looks like a meth head or a crackhead because they think they'll get their work done cheaper and it'll get done.
Yeah, there's a lot of those stereotypes. You know, it's definitely, you know, stereotypes are, you know, but you're right about that. But yeah, she just, I mean, and I legitimately think, I mean, you know, that the one documentary about her is amazing. But because it was her last interview that she ever did before she was executed, and she was fucking nuts. She was out of her goddamn mind. And maybe it is because she just had enough. She had just fucking snapped. She killed that first guy, and she was like, wow, men are trash, and killed the others.
Right.
And then, you know, after that, she, you know, pled in court, or, you know, at least said in court, well, you know, it was all self-defense. Even though the other guys weren't, you know, doing probably anything to her. She probably was, you know, just shooting them at that point. In her mind, she might have just seen as, you know, she's been wronged her entire life by people like this, that, you know, she, in some weird way, it's become self-defense for her. And so it just makes sense. I mean, she was already, you know, she was raised by her grandparents. She was, you know, continuously, you know, touched and by family members. And I mean, not just touched. I think she was pregnant at like 12 or some shit. By one of her
wasn't it like
friends or something?
Didn't her dad molest her?
No, her dad was. They never knew who her dad was. Her mom had her when she was like 13 or something like that. So Eileen's mom, she like birthed her at like a women's, like a troubled women's facility that they had back in the day. And then the grandparents decided to go ahead and take Eileen and raise her. And then, but her uncle, you know, she had an uncle that was, you know, abusive towards her. Her grandfather, who was basically her dad, abused her.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and then she got pregnant by.
Because I knew she was, you know, molested at least twice, and it was both within the family.
Yeah, and it's just very sad. It was just, you know, but something like that. The end. I mean, the end result to that is just, it was just inevitable, and you know, because they just. You know, when someone goes through shit like that, I mean, God, can you really blame them? You know, I'm not excusing what she did, but, you know, it really, she was just, she was beyond help at that point, because, you know what, even if they let her go ahead and plead defense, and they gave her, you know, some type of 10 years or something, you know, for everything, you know, what kind of life would that woman have had?
Right.
You know, I mean,
she didn't have a life before she went to prison, right. So then she gets out of prison, and it's a whole 10 years later. And with the way our world progresses right now. I mean, get fucked over. You know, the only person she ever loved testified against her and shit. And it's like, you know, she's never been loved her entire life. How can you live? Why would you want to live like that? And that's what she was just like, I'm ready. But then she was talking about aliens and shit, and how they were implanting like shit in her brain and all. I mean, so you know, the bitch snapped. She snapped. You know, in that case, like, that's very much a case of how you were raised, you know, and how it affects your adulthood. Because, you know, if she wouldn't have had such a horrific childhood, then she probably wouldn't have, first of all, even been a prostitute. You know, second of all, started killing a bunch of men. So, you know, that's, you know, to me, that's a very interesting, you know, Charles Manson, too. No, not Charles Manson. I don't know too much about Manson's history, but Ted Bundy was raised to believe that who he thought was his sister the whole time was his mom, and that's weird. You know, that's very strange. And then he had another, you know, he had another issue where, you know, he suffered heartbreak. It sounds like y'all motherfuckers need to start treating people better, because when you break someone's heart, they just fucking snap. The blood is on your hands. I'm just kidding. But, you know, that was another one. So, I mean, like I said, for me, you know, just because of these, like, big cases, it was always, it just always seemed like, you know, obviously it's the way that you're raised. And then there's, like, different studies and stuff. I remember reading this one. I can't remember. It was a long time. It was, like, in the early 1900s. Some guy did an experiment where or maybe he just talked about theoretically doing an experiment. I can't remember, where they, you know, he said he could take kids, you know, give them kids, and he could raise them to be anything that he wanted them to be, just, you know, depending on how the child was raised. And, you know, I just, I mean, I'm a parent, guys, and it ain't that way. Yeah.
You know, I can tell you that, you know, which really makes me kind of think that nature plays a bit more of a role, because, you know, my kid, she's got a personality of her own. Like, you can't tell her nothing. You know, you can't tell that girl nothing.
Nothing.
So, like, obviously, I'm not teaching her. It's not a lack of me teaching her things, because I try, and I do, because I'm her parent. You know, as a matter of fact, we talk about a lot of things. I mean, I'm really in depth with her. And I do see those things that I've taught her come out. I remember this past Christmas season, we were just walking around, and, you know, I just told her, I just told her, you know, I would tell her Merry Christmas a lot, even though it wasn't Christmas yet. And she'd be like, why do you say that? I'm like, it makes people feel better, you know. And we were at the grocery store, and she sees this, like, really elderly lady, and she goes up to her, and she goes, Merry Christmas. And I was like, I talked to her about it later. I'm like, why'd you tell her Merry Christmas? She's like, because it makes people feel better. And I was like, okay. So, you know, when I see things get through, I'm like, great. But she definitely doesn't take in every lesson that I teach her, because, again, can't tell the girl nothing.
Right. So, it depends on if she wants to learn that lesson.
Right. And she doesn't. So, you know, well, that's one thing. She poked me in the eye accidentally. She poked a hole through my motherfucking eyeball, guys. I had a hole in my eyeball. And it was an accident, but she was, you know, waving her finger around and getting too close to me, and ends up poking me in the eye. And but still doesn't listen. I even bring it up. I'm like, you remember when you poked me in the eye? And she's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that this time. Accident. Right, that was an accident. Learned nothing. So, I don't know. One time when she was real little, she thought she would be cool, and she thought she would headbutt me. And she, I'm cooler than she is. So I put my arm up in front of my face to block because she was right there to block my face, and she fucking came down. She came down on my arm so hard. I was scared. I thought she broke her nose. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to jail. They're gonna take my kid away because she's an asshole. But she was fine. But she's never tried ever since then. So I mean, sometimes she learns. But yeah. So I mean, and then one case that always fascinates me is Jeffrey Dahmer, because he did some fucked up shit to people. He killed 17 men. I'm sure you guys know he killed 17 men. He had a thing for cannibalism. Usually he would drug them, and then he would try to he would drill holes in his skull to his brain, and he would try to make these different mixtures of acids and stuff, and pour them into the brains. He was trying to make an army of loyal sex slaves. It was very strange, and he was very open about it after he got arrested. He would talk to you about it, but he would keep things. He would keep the bodies for a little too long, and he kept most of the skulls. In his fridge he had a whole entire severed head, somebody's hands. He had an entire penis in there, just weird stuff. And it's his dad, I can't remember exactly. His dad was some type of scientist or engineer. He was very smart. Very, very smart man. They had money. His parents were together for most of his childhood. They got divorced, but I think they didn't get divorced until Jeffrey was 17, 18. And, but his mom had some issues. She wasn't all there. She wasn't really abusive or anything. She was just kind of crazy. There's not really much talk of her being, physically or emotionally abusive. Probably more emotionally unavailable. And then his dad worked a lot. But, his dad, when he wasn't at work, really tried to be a good father. He really did. He was really involved with them. He noticed that young Jeffrey had a thing for picking up roadkill, and he'd bring it back home, and he would take it and dissolve it in acid that he had with these chemistry sets that he had and stuff like that. And his dad just thought it was a science thing. He thought, oh cool, my kid's a scientist like me, and thought that it was just his kid being curious. Yeah. And one reason that Jeffrey would keep all these mementos from his kills was that he had a profile. He killed men, and he was very gay, but couldn't come out with his sexuality because at the time it was a different time, and so it was very intimidating. So he had that repressed kind of thing, and so his way of hanging on, getting these lovers and then hanging on to them was to cannibalize them, or keep parts of their body, or he would take photographs. There's tons of them. They're really fucked up and weird. You can look them up online, but there's Jeffrey Dahmer photographs. So he had a really weird disconnect at some point in his life, and that really fucked with him. So what was at play there? What was it? Was it the nurture? I mean, was it the suppression of him not being able to be who he fully was that caused him to snap? Was it just something he was born with, and then he acted on it because he went crazy? I mean, because then we do have people like Charles Manson, who is very obviously nuts.
Right.
He's dead now, but he's crazy. And it's so he was probably just born with it, and then actually Gacy too. I know way too much about serial killers. Well, guys, that's why I'm gonna have on my YouTube channel. I'm gonna do True Crime Thursdays, so where I'll talk about extensively about true crime and whatnot. But so stay tuned for that. Shameless plug. But Gacy, he was pretty normal until he had had a fall or something. He had a head injury, and then from that point on, he was never right. Like ever since then, he just wasn't right. And so they think that contributed to him ended up killing. Gosh, he killed like 34 people or something, 34 kids at that, boys. And, but then again, different time. If he was gay and a pedophile at that, that's okay. But if he was gay and it got brought on by some type of weird, you can't be who you truly need to be, then that would be a nurture aspect rather than a nature aspect. Nature aspect would have been the head injury. Yeah. The nurture would have been the suppression. So, I don't know. It's really difficult. What do you think? Do you think people are who they are based off of their nature or based off of the way that they're brought up?
I think it's a pretty good mix of both. I think based off of the individual, it depends on them specifically and their experience. Some people it might be more of a nature aspect. Some people it might be more of a nurturing aspect. And because, we all have different capacity to how we handle things. Yeah. So one person could go through one thing and handle it completely different than somebody else. So it's kind of like these nurturing experiences come into play. But then there's also like the natural part of the experience where, like mental disorders come into play. And that can really... fuck with people in different ways that it might not somebody who doesn't suffer from depression or anxiety or anything of the sort. But, I mean, I think most of the time it comes down to more of a nurturing aspect, I feel. And I feel like when I say nurturing, I don't mean just from parents alone. I mean from the world and the way the world has shaped
just
that
outward
person.
Experiences.
So that could be, a neighborhood you live in where you have to basically fight, but at the same time, that could be seen as a nature aspect because, in the wild,
that's true.
They have to fight. So it's like. True. And at some point, everybody in their life is going to have to fight for something. It might not be physically, it might not be whatever, but you are going to have to make a stand for yourself. Right. And to me, that's fighting. So,
true.
It's like what really qualifies as nature, and then what really qualifies as nurture.
Right.
And is it always nature, and is it always nurture, or is it kind of like a blend of the two? And I think that's why we can't really pin down any like scientific it's nature or it's nurture. It's because there's so many different elements that come into play that could really make it go one way or the other.
Yeah, that's true. You're saying like if you're born into like a bad neighborhood, like you're born into poverty basically, so it's like that's kind of both because it's something that you're born with. But at the same time, it's also something that could have been prevented. Sure, nothing that you could have done to prevent it, but could have been prevented, and could have been something that was different. And but would you be different had you not grown up in that situation? I guess is what it comes down to. And it probably is a good mix of both, because different people are they go through different horrific things, and I know that from being just a trauma victim, a very severe trauma victim at that. And, and I know because I go to therapists and it takes me like 3 months of seeing a therapist to like tell them my entire life story, like everything. And then I'll have to like backtrack. I'll be like, oh wait. And then at this age, I think this happened. Yeah, that happened. Cause then I still to this day, I'll have random memories and I'm like, and then it takes me like a couple days to process. I'm like, did that really happen? Is that just something I made up in my mind?
It's actually happened with like my tarot readings. Like I've done done tarot readings where I look deeper into like my issues or stuff that I've bottled up, and like things have literally like resurfaced that I didn't even know I went through. And then it's like you have to.
Then you have to work through it, right? You gotta work through it.
Sometimes that's really challenging because you've already done so much work in that realm of your life, and then you have something like come to the surface, and it's like, fuck, I gotta do this all over again.
You're like, I thought I had that figured out. Yeah, and right, and so it's like I'm told time and time and again by professionals, they're shocked that I am the way that I am because I should be destructive, like
same.
like the science says, like I should be out there killing people and shit, or something severe, and I'm not. I don't know. Maybe I am actually. And I'm not. But yeah, I mean, but I've typically for the most part turned out the total opposite, and I'm usually very optimistic and hopeful and all that because the experiences have somehow instead made me stronger instead of make me have a hardened. Because I know what it's like to be, one of those people that has nobody, has nothing, has no support system, and feels very alone. And I feel like I don't want anybody to have to go through that personally, and so I will never be that for somebody. I will always be the person that is there. And so, I've kind of made it my mission to I guess prove the world wrong that it's not such a shitty place. I don't know, I don't know why I am the way I am, guys. Right. I'm shocked by it sometimes, and it's not like it doesn't get me down because it does. And that's something that I've been struggling with the past couple of months. I've really, really been struggling with it because I've not been, my usual happy-go-lucky self, and I've had to face all these childhood traumas and stuff like that. However, the last couple of months I haven't thought about, killing anybody or, raping people or,
well,
things
and I mean,
like
it
that.
doesn't always have to translate to something.
I haven't thought of
too.
hurting anybody. Like
right.
I guess. I've never thought of taking
or
out
yourself.
Another person. Well, I have thought about hurting myself, so I can't
but
say
you haven't done it.
I haven't done it, yes. I haven't done it. But, that's, I've thought about it, but I haven't done it. Obviously. I'm still here, so that's something. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things that really, but then you're right. It doesn't have to manifest. Usually that's the biggest argument is when it comes to people that, are dangerous and hurt people to that degree. But it does manifest in other ways. Like you were telling me about the one, I think it was a twin that was born wrong gender.
Two,
I don't remember.
Male twins.
Okay.
And they got circumcision, which you shouldn't do.
Yeah, you shouldn't
leave
do.
it be.
Right.
Keep the skin. Fuck it.
Right.
Let them decide when they get old.
I like an uncircumcised dick.
I do too. It reminds me of those toys that you used to get at like
yes,
the gas station, little tubes.
Yes, that you shake around. They're so fun to play with. Anyway.
But he had his circumcision got botched, and this was like in the 60s too, and it was in Canada. But he had the botched circumcision, so the doctor who did it just decided to go ahead and perform sex reassignment surgery, and
they just thought if we raise it as a girl, she'll never know,
And that wasn't the case because that's not the nature.
Yeah.
So that was a big pivotal moment in the nature versus nurture argument. But the guy that actually like performed the study and stuff, he I forget the term, but it's basically like the psychology of sex and orientation and gender.
Okay.
So everything that kind of encompasses that. And he wasn't the greatest person. He would make the I'm still gonna refer to them as the boys.
Brothers, yeah.
I can't remember the other one's name, but the one with the botched circumcision, his name was David. And he would make David and his brother perform sexual acts on one another to help kind of like normalize the process, I guess. Which
is really strange. I mean, that's strange. And
that's fucked up.
Oh, right. They're kids doing this. Yeah. So I guess, that part is a weird nurture. But, like you said, they did it for the sake of trying to, emulate, just trying to really drill it in that you're a girl, you're a girl, you're a girl. And,
But, I mean, that also brought up a lot of arguments about sexual orientation, too. Because, like, granted, with this case, David grew up and he always knew that something wasn't right. and he actually decided to transition back into a man. But, you know, it brought up the argument of like, well, that could happen and it could work, but that person might be attracted to women versus men. So it's like, if, say he were straight male that had a botched circumcision and he had the sex reassignment surgery done, and then did that same experiment with another adolescent girl, it could have had a different outcome. I don't think that's the case, but that's what some people argue.
So that, I mean, was that what it was when he became David, you know, after when he became himself physically? Was he gay or was he attracted to women?
I'm pretty sure he was attracted to women.
Well, I mean, that's another big argument then. So it's like, because being raised as a girl, especially in that time, naturally you're told you're attracted to boys, and it just wasn't.
So, yeah,
you know,
that's basically why that was even an argument.
Right.
And you know, he actually ended up killing himself because he couldn't deal with it. But you know, you can't really, like, especially when it comes to sex, you can't force anybody to do anything. And that's going to traumatize anybody. Even if they are attracted to the gender that they're being forced upon, they're still being forced, and it's still traumatic.
Right.
And plus, they're fucking kids. They shouldn't be
that's just
experimenting sexually. I mean,
kids
don't get me wrong.
It's
it's normal for kids to explore their bodies.
on their own, not under the instruction of adults. That's
fucked up.
Right. That's weird. If somebody came to me and was like, I've been experimenting and having these kids do this, I'd be like, I'm calling the police.
Right.
Like, that's...
But, you know, if you're a licensed, you know, person, people might not second guess it as much. I'm sure they're still second guessing it, or at least I'd hope they would be.
Well, that's a big... I mean, that's that question of ethics, which I think we should do an episode on ethics, too. See, we need to write these down while I talk. I get so many ideas while we're doing the show.
I know, same.
And then, like, you know, tomorrow I'll be like, what are we doing next week? I don't know either.
Yeah.
But yeah, ethics is a big thing. I just did one of my my horror host show is one of the movies that I did was The Brain That Wouldn't Die. So I talked about head transplants and stuff like that. And so ethics would be a fun one to do. But anyway, that's that's not ethical at all to make kids have sex with each other or do sexual acts. Because I don't think he actually made them have sex. I think he just made them kind of do the motions. I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact specifics of it. I honestly didn't even want to look into it because
it just makes you feel sick.
Yeah, I don't like the thought. I don't want to know about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to know about that kind of stuff, I guess, but I didn't feel like for me as an individual, like there's nothing for me to gain from that because I'm not engaging in that. I don't condone somebody engaging in that, whether there's a good reason, quote unquote, for it or not. You know, like, to me, there isn't a good reason to make kids do stuff like that.
That's weird. Yeah, that's weird. I mean, very sad that David did end up committing suicide recently. It was recently.
Yeah, he died in 2004.
Okay, so pretty recently.
Yeah.
That's horrible. That's I mean, well, because what a fucking shock. I mean,
and it was May the 4th. May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you, David.
Poor guy.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, what a big surprise that is. You grew up your whole life because he didn't know that he was originally born male, did he? Until one day I think he found out about it.
I think it was when he was a teenager, like
probably,
a late teenager.
Well, he's like, you're making me go to therapy every week, and I'm having sex with my brother, and it's weird.
Yeah.
Or whatever, I'm sure, at some point he started asking questions, and but still, that's fucking shocking. I mean, that's that's a hard truth to live with, is that your whole entire existence is not real. That'll mess with that'll make you snap.
And I don't even know if the parents' consent was even taken into consideration as far as the reassignment surgery goes. I can't remember if that was something that
They did on a whim.
He just did because it was in the moment and there wasn't time to really like discuss it or.
I wonder.
But I don't. There's got to be something different that
you would think
they could have done. But there is like
sue or something.
Yeah, there is some serious like botched circumcisions where it's like there's no saving it. So it's like.
So what do you do?
Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, if I was a parent in that position, I wouldn't know what to do.
Right. Well, that's why people shouldn't.
I wouldn't get a fucking circumcision.
Yeah, don't circumcise your child.
Right. It's so unnecessary, and it takes away from satisfaction for the males and their partners.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody was telling me about their. I don't know. Talking about. Other parents are weird. We do talk about weird things to each other, but not in a weird way. But they were telling me about their child is like a year and a half, or maybe he's 2 or something, and his like testicles hadn't descended or something yet. And like I said, we're just parents talking about weird stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I'm glad I had a girl. I don't know nothing about the testicles.
I know how to handle that, girl.
Right, I don't know nothing about that. No, I don't have an opinion. I'm not gonna sit here and talk about your kids' testicles.
Yeah, I think if I have kids one day, I think I want a girl. I don't know.
You'd rather have a girl?
I want a boy and a girl, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a girl, but she's not like a girly girl, which is really shocking because, I guess. But I guess I am, and I'm not. It just depends on the day.
Yeah, you're a good mix.
I got my days.
Go back and forth,
but
you're never like butch, and I don't think she is either.
I guess she's not.
Well, I mean, she kind of is. She's not like.
I don't think she's a total tomboy, but she leans on the tomboy side. Like, I can't do her hair and stuff, but like I can paint her fingernails, and she likes to do makeup, and
she likes pink. And
yeah, I'm like she's, and she'll dress up sometimes. But okay, so I guess she's just like me. I don't know. That makes sense, I guess. But yeah, and again, I tried the nurture thing because I'm telling you. I want my kid to be a lesbian so bad. I want her to be a lesbian so bad because lesbians can't just accidentally get pregnant, and it's like my biggest fear. I'm like, don't have kids, it's awful, and I can't, I tried to influence it, and it just doesn't work. She already has a boyfriend, so she'll be pregnant by next year. I'm just kidding, but yeah, that's it. It just doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Like I said, you can't tell them anything. You can't influence. Well, and I know, like, people are like, my kid's going to be so cool because I'm going to raise them to do this and that and the other. And it's like, and I've tried to raise my kid with that type of, just like pop culture, thing. Like, my kid's no good. She sucks at video games. She fucking sucks at video games. And that sucks because I love video games.
But she still likes them, so.
She likes them to an extent. But
her iPad games.
She plays on her iPad a lot, but like, I can't like sit down, have like a serious Mario Kart competition with her because she's not good at it. Yeah. Whereas like when I was 5, like I played with, my video games by myself for hours on end and had no issue. Like I didn't, and I just, for a long time I'm like, is this normal? Is she okay? But she just isn't into them, and I can't, force her to be into them because she's got a mind of her own. And there's some things that we've gotten, even ground on, but then like, I'll tell you, that's the biggest mistake you can make is to get your kid into something that you really like because they will ruin it for you. Because they won't shut the fuck up about it. My ex-boyfriend, his kids were, his one son fucking loves Pokemon, and that's all he talks about is Pokemon. So when I met the kids, I really like Pokemon, and I have I've got like a Pokemon waist belt. It's got like Pikachu all over it. It's got like a Pokeball in the middle, and I wore it to meet him. And let me tell you, this kid fell in love with me, man. He was so excited, and we just sat there and talked about Pokemon. I told him what Pokemon games I had. He was jealous. I told him, I was like, I will give you every single one of my legendaries up until now if you can beat me in a match, in a battle. And I haven't gotten to do that yet. I'm still going to. I kept it's a promise that I got. So once he can beat me in Pokemon, he can have all my Pokemon. But for the dad, it was very annoying because again, that was all the kid talked about. Right. So I didn't get to spend that much time with them. So thankfully, I didn't get burnt out on it. But I understand for my own kid, You know, she's got things that she doesn't stop talking about. And it's like, it's not that they're not cool things. It's just that you're over it. So, you know, and on top of that, she's ADHD. So she has fixations with things. And so it just makes it 10 times worse. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you know, as a parent, you know, I think that there's definitely some of both. You know, I think that there's some things that I see in her that I have directly taught her. But again, she's absolutely got her own personality, and she always has. And, you know, there was just nothing that I could do to change that about her. Because that's just who she is. So, you know, that really opened my eyes to the nature versus nurture argument was, you know, raising my own human.
What about the Amish? Like, because they all have, like, is it Rumspringa?
Oh, girl. I don't know anything about the
Amish. It's like they're 16 and then they go out and explore the world.
They're allowed to go out. Yeah.
You know, there's cases where they end up going crazy. Like, they start drinking and become alcoholics or, you know, whatever. And then there's other people that come back.
And that go back to being Amish.
So it's like, and then there's other people that do that stuff. They go wild for however long Rumspringa is. And then go back. And it's like, how does nature versus nurture play in a role in that?
Well, that's true, because they don't really have much differences in how they raise the kids, because they all pretty much, it's pretty basic. It's a very basic lifestyle.
Right.
And they all are raised exactly the same way, but then they do end up turning out differently. So how much of their personality comes into play with that? That's a good question. Now, the Amish, they do some shady shit. So, you know, already. So I wouldn't say that the kids have never, ever, ever been exposed to things. But, you know, the Amish really like riding the Greyhound bus.
Are you sure that's not the Mennonites?
Well, it could be the Mennonites. I don't know what the difference is. Do you?
Well, Mennonites are allowed to use, like, cell phones and have electricity and things like that.
Okay, what's different, though, about them?
The Amish don't. Yeah, they don't have technology, so maybe, I don't know, maybe it is Amish, maybe it's not. It's like when the Black Lives Matter protests came out, it's like, y'all even pissed off the Amish.
But it was Mennonites.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference is. I've never been to, you know, we're in Ohio, so we have Amish here, and I've never been to, like, Amish country.
Maybe we need to go and do a whole episode on Amish, because
we could do
weird.
a vlog about Amish while we're there. It is weird. I know that the Amish are basically, if anybody's talking about a puppy mill, it's from the Amish. They've got like the monopoly on puppy mills, and it's pretty gross. But that's why I don't like them. They're gross people. They're gross people. And they're kind of assholes, really. They kind of are. I mean, anybody that I've heard that have had interactions with them, they're really, really mean. And it's like, okay, well, I guess they didn't teach you guys respect in the Amish country.
They do have a superior complex because they feel like they're better than the rest of the world because they don't have all these external influences.
Right. That's something that they're born into. They're taught. Right. That's something that they're nurtured with too. You know, but I don't know. Like I said, I think it's a good mix.
Is that really nurture if they're born into it? Is that at that point nature?
Nature is in your brain. It is your physical makeup that is going to make you. So, like, okay, schizophrenia. Okay, so people that have that are schizophrenic's genetic. It's in your brain, and it's a disease that you have. You're never going to get over it. You can't rewire your brain. It's just the way it is. You know, that would be a natural thing compared to like PTSD, which is not something that's naturally in your brain. It's caused by an outward experience that causes you to have PTSD. You can rewire that, like you can, or you know, at least you can. Brain scans show that it can be different, right? It can be different, and so you know that would be so whatever it is, it's in your brain. Again, you know, are killers born or are they bred? You know, that's.
But if it's something like it's all you've ever known, you know, that kind of is your natural environment, even if it is unnatural. Yeah, because, I mean, we live in, you know, like with TVs and stuff like that, and it's natural to us.
Yeah, that's natural to us. So I guess there's a way. There's a difference between like ethical, natural. Just what is normal for you. That's more your normal than your natural. Your natural is just your physical. It's your physical makeup, and so what physically you're born to do. Richard Trenton Chase. He is crazy. He used to break into people's houses. He didn't break into anybody's house, actually. If the door was unlocked, he would just walk in. That's why I always lock my fucking door. And he would fucking slaughter people and drink their blood and shit because he thought that, like, drinking their blood... Because he thought that he was being, like, poisoned. His blood was being poisoned, and he needed to get new blood into his body to get out the old bad blood. He was crazy. And, like, he ended up, like... just horrific shit. He, like, killed this baby and then, like, continued to, like, take it around town and shit with him. I mean, just horrible shit. But he was crazy. I mean, he was really bad schizophrenic. And so, if he wasn't a schizophrenic, would he have went crazy and killed people for their blood? Probably not. No, he probably wouldn't have. He probably wouldn't have had any reason to. But because he was born with a genetic disorder.
Well, did his, the nurturing aspect... encourage that in any way.
Play a part in that. And that is a good question because I'll be honest, I guess I'd have to really look into his childhood a little bit more to see. But
that's the complex thing about it though, is because, he could have gone through the same experiences that another schizophrenic person went through.
Well, right, because all schizophrenics don't go and kill people and drink their blood either. Right. Just like people talk about, mass shooters. And how they have a mental health problem. And it's like, but people point out that not everybody that has mental health issues goes out and kills a bunch of people.
Right.
So, is it really a mental health problem? Obviously, I think that they do have some type of mental health problem. Now, whether or not that mental health problem is, like schizophrenia, where schizophrenia is, again, it's a disorder in your brain. Your brain is not correct. It's wrong, compared to... developed mental health,
mentally unwell,
right? There's different degrees of mental health, and I think that for you to go out and kill anybody, take anybody's life, there's something wrong, right? A normal person with a normal functioning brain doesn't do that, But it doesn't mean that everybody with a mental health disorder is going to do that.
So, what do you think about people that willingly go into the army because they may or may not at some point have to kill somebody?
Okay.
So it's like...
Do I think that that's okay? Then that's acceptable? Is that what you're asking?
I mean, do you think that person would qualify as mentally ill? They signed up for it.
Yes, I do. And I do believe that people in the military often do have mental health issues for a multitude of reasons. I think that some of them have like a aspect, if you look at a lot of military people, they end up joining the military because they have family members that did, and maybe it's their parents and they're used to that military lifestyle, or maybe it's an older brother or something, and then I think those people, and I'm sure they talk to them about them, and they're just like, I never had to kill anybody, because you don't always have to,
right.
It's not, it isn't, a maybe not kind of situation. Some people never get deployed anywhere. They just go in and they work and they work out and go to school.
I'm sure there's people that, they don't sign up because they may or may not have to kill somebody. That might not be the case, but I'm sure there's also people that do sign up because they do want to kill people.
Because they do want to kill people, right? Well, just like the police.
Right.
The police is another good example. I would say that most police officers are bullies. And that's just not even from outward influences of, the media. That's from my own personal experience.
Yeah, same.
And, I would say that most of them do it because it puts them in a position of power. And they know that. And they would like to be untouchable. But does that mean that there's no good cops ever? No, it doesn't. And there are absolutely good cops. There are people that get into it because they know that there's such issues with the police force, and they, like me, want to be the change for that world, because the best way to change it is to infiltrate and go from there and be the police officer that stands up and goes, nope, not doing this. That's, what's his name? Actually, I want to tell the story. One of our friends, our black friend, on his birthday a couple years ago, he was walking home. He was very drunk, and he was walking home. He got stopped by the police. He got arrested because he was out drunk. And that police officer beat his ass. And this happened here in Kettering, Ohio. And, put him in handcuffs, threw him on the ground face first and everything. He got to the police station here in Kettering, and the other police officers were appalled that it happened. And, they were very upset. They did end up letting him go. They had kept him for the night because he was drunk, but they did, they didn't press charges or anything like that because he got his ass beat for no reason.
Right.
And the other police officers weren't okay with it. And they, helped him to, take the police officer's job and stuff like that. So, I mean, there are ones out there that are good. However, most people get into it because they want to be bullies. They want to be in power, So I think the same goes for the military. I think they get into it because then you could become, listen to all these teenage boys and stuff talk about, how they want to be a sniper.
Right.
And that's weird. Why? That's so strange. Sniping is like the cowardly. I mean, sure, it's skilled, but it's a very cowardly way to even kill somebody. So it's like.
Well, I think really any kind of violence towards another person that isn't self-defense kind of equates to, having some kind of internal struggle, because who wants to just go out and hurt people?
Just to hurt
or
them.
Hurt animals.
Yeah.
Like, I could understand if somebody, didn't want to be a part of, I guess, we'll just say the secular world. So they went out and hunted to get their food.
Okay.
But people that are a part of this world and can go to the grocery store and get their food, why do they want to go out and kill animals?
Well, that's like a macho thing, kind of.
Yeah, but it's like, what
weird.
Is it in
It is some type of
person?
dominance, because usually when you meet those people that hunt and shit, it's a dominance thing.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, and right away, like, that they want to feel superior. and I agree with that. I understand where hunting is beneficial. I hate it, but I get it. But I could never do that because that's not me. I don't know. I think I hit a squirrel the other day with my car, and I was very sad, and I cried. So, and I didn't even have to watch it die,
Right.
Like, and that's just the idea of it might have happened, and I don't know if it did or not.
Our one of our friends was driving and hit a bird, and she was so upset that she couldn't even go to school. It was Sam. I don't know if you want to leave that in there or take it out.
She probably doesn't care. Yeah, well, I understand.
But it was
that.
Sam.
Oh yeah, that's horrible. I hit a cat one time, and it was awful. I was devastated. I couldn't even drive home. I pulled right over. I couldn't even drive home. I was just beside myself.
They say it's better just to hit the animal than it is to slam on your brakes. I'm like, I'm slamming on my brakes. If somebody's going to hit my car,
at least I, did it. I have more chances of surviving than the animal does if I hit it. I understand that.
But then I go to the store and I buy meat. So
it's a quick decision. I mean, it's difficult. I understand that. But no, I mean, I think that there is definitely something wrong with people that have the need to kill. But that's not to say that we haven't all thought about killing someone. I have someone in mind that I would kill if I could.
Well, I mean, who hasn't thought of how, if they murdered somebody, because you might accidentally murder somebody one day. What would you do? Would you call the police, or would you hide the body? And if you hide the body, what would you do? You gotta have a game plan in place.
Shit happens, you gotta be prepared for shit to happen.
But I'm also not trying to get investigated either. I mean, I've never thankfully
we already admitted that we should be serial killers, so we're a duo.
Yeah. I mean, I don't ever want to be in a position where I have accidentally killed somebody, because one, I would never be able to forgive myself.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
whether it was an accident or not.
Exactly. Well, I had my cousin's husband. I won't say his name, but he ran from the police officers. He was supposed to get pulled over, and he was in a police chase. And during the police chase, he hit and killed a 12-year-old girl with his car. And he feels fucking awful about it. He feels absolutely terrible about it, because that's not the outcome that he expected. But it happened, and he's in prison. But, it can happen in weird ways like that. And, you know, if it does, you know, are you going to feel bad? Are you going to hide the body and act like it never happened? You know, but, you know, I mean, we've all thought about it, sure. You know, like I said, I've thought about it, and I can name some names. And I've thought about how I'd do it. And it would be a horrible, slow, awful, painful death. I don't feel like I'd feel gratification. But the only reason why I would do it is if I felt like somebody truly, truly deserved it. And so, well, that's like one of those things. Like, you know, people are like, well, like talking about, you know, if their kids were molested or whatever, and they walked in on it, or, you know, some parents have done that, you know, or their kids have been killed or whatever, and they've taken it into their own hands, and, you know, they kill the offender. And I mean, I think that would, you know, yeah, I'd be that person. And, you know, again, I don't feel like I would feel satisfied, you know, because I'm doing it out of a pure rage by just pulling a trigger, and especially not by pulling a trigger from a rooftop somewhere. Like, that's so, I don't understand. Again, I don't understand the desire to be a sniper, but
yeah, I don't either.
You know, that just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. But I don't think everybody gets into the military with the hope that they're going to kill someone. But, you know, they definitely know that that's a possibility. And so, or, you know, maybe they don't think about it. I mean, really, people are pretty blind to, like, things that happen around us every day. And you just don't even consider the possibilities until it's happening to you. And,
like, oh, fuck, I signed up for this.
Right. Like, what was I thinking? You know, I had a weird situation, and maybe I'll talk about it in an Aliens episode. But it was very, very, very scary. It was a very scary situation I was in personally. And it was one of those things that was like, you know, in my mind, I'm like, shit, something big and crazy and wild is happening. It's not normal. This isn't normal, you know. And it was just a very weird overreaction. And, you know, that's just the kind of shit that happens. Well, like when I got my eye poked out, you know, it was immediate panic. I'm like, oh shit, something weird. You know, it's a possibility every single day when I wake up that my eye's going to get poked out. But it's not something that I think about because it sounds so ridiculous in my head that it's probably not going to happen. So, like, and then, you know, when it did. So, maybe people in the military feel that way. Like, oh, yeah, I'm going to kill somebody, sure. And then they just don't think about it until they do, you know. So, that's, you know, just one of those things, I guess. I mean, you know, that's, I have a hard time believing that they love their country so much that they would just die for it. But, but I think that's more of a nurture thing if you got family members. Well, in Forrest Gump, you know, Lieutenant Dan, he, you know, his whole family generationally was in the military and fought different wars and died in different wars. And, you know, that was a nurture thing, you know, for him. He was brought up to believe that that was the right thing to do, so therefore he did it. So I don't know. We've gotten severely off topic like we usually do. But that's what the podcast is for, right? That's the fun of it. I don't know. Hopefully you guys enjoy these conversations. Hopefully we make it entertaining for you because, you know, I was talking to Ivy earlier and I was telling her in researching nature versus nurture, there's some fucking boring shit out there. It's so goddamn boring. Oh my God. Some of it is so hard to get through. It's interesting, but just some of the, you know, just some of the ways that it is a very...
It's our job to make it fun.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, hopefully we do that for you guys. Hopefully, you know, maybe this is something that you've never personally looked into. You just always kind of knew, and, you know, maybe we were able to give some type of insights into, you know, what the research is, but that's about it, really. I mean, I wouldn't suggest going out of your way to look it up because it's fucking boring.
Yeah, you can pretty much figure it out from your own experience and how you as an individual feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things. It's like it's almost like there's no science really to it because
there's so many things that can come into play.
Right, exactly. And there's no way for us to like take these cases. Well, like we were talking about, you know, Richard Chase. We can't go back in time and take away his schizophrenia and see how he would have been without it. You know, to know if that really played a role. You know, we can't go back in time for, you know, David and, you know, take back the botched circumcision and go from there. You know, we can't do those things. And, That's what makes it difficult, is because we don't have a way to prove it, and we don't really have a way to disprove it. So, I would settle for, I think that both influences are important, and I think that in order for a specific timeline of events to take place, in order for you to get somewhere, or lethal or whatever, I think that a special mix of circumstances have to happen in order to get you there, already mixed with your brain chemistry. And so I think it's a very special formula. So I mean, as morbidly weird as it is, it's kind of really beautiful that things like that happen, because it's almost kind of a miracle in its own way. It's all so personal and so individual that you really can't replicate the results perfectly by putting the same formula together, because it's so unpredictable. So
yeah, and I think a lot of like the nurturing aspect too is like, you can be nurtured in a healthy way and things still
don't work out, right?
And
well, that's what I said with Dahmer.
nature.
He had a pretty decent childhood. He didn't have any really horrible fucked up childhood. It was pretty normal, and he still ended up killing and eating 17 men. So that's not normal. That's way beyond.
Yeah, I think nature and nurture kind of have to work together, essentially. So, like if there's a natural aspect, like, say schizophrenia, if that person isn't, nurtured in the right way, as far as like therapy and treatments and stuff like that, then that, just only makes the situation worse for that individual. Right. Now that individual that is treated could still go out and murder and kill people, or, just do bad things, or not be a good person, but odds are that if you do anything and everything that you can in a positive way to, kind of make that situation a little bit more easy for the individual,
right.
Even if it is challenging in the moment, because, it's never really easy to go through experiences like that, because like my brother, he's schizophrenic, and some of the shit he's done, like, has given me nightmares.
Yeah.
Or like I've woke up and like in the middle of the night and just like he's saying some shit or doing some shit, and it literally scares me.
It's scary, right?
You know?
And that's because that they're not there at that point. It's their disease that has taken over. And who in your family is schizophrenic? I mean, I know your brother, but he got it from somewhere. Do you know?
My great uncle, he was schizophrenic as well. He ended up killing himself. He was actually a wonderful musician. Slash actually has his guitar, because there was only like 500 in the world. It wasn't like he had the guitar because my uncle was such a great musician. He was a great musician, but the guitar was so rare. And at the time, it was kind of like one of those things where it's like, I don't know. It may have been, advertised as, a limited edition or whatever. Yeah. I don't know back in those days what they would call it, if that is what they would call it. But, yeah, he had a really rare guitar, and when he passed, they auctioned, all of his stuff off, and, well, not all of it, but, stuff that was worth money in order to pay for expenses and things like that. But, yeah, Slash actually has his guitar.
Buy his guitar. Wow, that's pretty wild. Well, usually, they say schizophrenia, although it's genetic, it tends to, like, skip a generation, or it's not usually, like, a direct... It can be, but that's pretty rare that it does. So, like, my child's father is schizophrenic. And so, and usually schizophrenia doesn't appear until adulthood. And so I have to worry about it all the time and wonder.
Well, and it can appear at any time, too.
Yeah, right.
So it's like...
She could be, like, well into her 50s, and I'm like, oh, she's great. And then all of a sudden she's crazy.
Yeah.
Or, whatever. It could be tomorrow. Or it could be never. I mean, she's got pretty good chances for never, but at the same time, it's possible, so we'll see. But that's no. I just am curious for my own curiosity's sake. But yeah, it can be a scary thing. So I don't know. It's well, and then your brother's never killed anybody or anything. So
no, he does have a lot of violence in him though.
Yeah,
and he's been in some situations that he definitely shouldn't have been. Right. But he was also battling addiction, which when you mix addiction and mental health, there is literally such a slim chance that person can ever be sober or
normal or
be sober and live a normal life.
Right, have some type of normal life, right?
Yeah, so it's
very true.
Well, both of my brothers have struggled with addiction. I've struggled with addiction, maybe not as severe as them, but
well, they say addiction is genetic, is what they say.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's genetic or if it's just one of those nurture things where it's learned behavior.
Right.
Because it's something like my father's an addict, so it's like.
Well, it's like inherited trauma.
Yeah, that's true. It would be pretty similar to that, I suppose.
But I guess it still is different. It's like.
And I've never considered myself in that. I've done a lot of drugs, but I've never personally been addicted to anything to the point of like physical illness or. Things like that where I felt like, or, even making bad life choices and spending money on drugs instead of, but, that's what they say. Anyway, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that, that one overrides the other one? Do you think that one has more of an influence than the other? Or do you think that it's a happy accident with the mix of nature and nurture? I'm sure it can work to people's benefit. I'm sure for some reason, somewhere down the line for me in my life, maybe I am so happy-go-lucky because maybe I did at some point go through something and found some type of comfort in another person's presence, which is why I feel the need to take care of everybody and do what I do.
Or there could have been that one experience that just changes us as people.
Right.
Like we could have definitely gone down the road of being a bad person and hurting other people if we didn't go through that one experience
right. So I mean,
changed everything.
Right. So it's not like that nature versus nurture argument is always a bad thing. It could definitely be beneficial, or maybe somewhere in people's brains it's natural for them to be a bad person, and I just don't have that.
We did kind of focus a lot on like the negative aspects of nurture and nature. Yeah, maybe we could do an episode on the positive.
Just do all positives. Well, for the most part, when they do studies and stuff, it's because something
bad
horrible has happened, right? But it can influence you in the opposite direction as well. So I mean, that's
like people that are naturally gifted,
right?
Which there are those people that are deemed naturally gifted. Sometimes they get offended by that because even if they are naturally good at it, they still put in a lot of work. They
do, right.
It's like people that
nothing is free, nothing is easy, right?
And I think it's more prominent amongst like the art industry, I guess.
Right.
Well, I mean, art industry is very broad, but like specifically like
is very broad.
Drawing and painting and things like that. People say, "Oh, you're a natural," and it's like, yeah, but I'm only this good
because I've done it.
Because I've pushed myself and I've done so much. So it's like, but that goes to the argument of nature versus nurture. If you didn't have a natural like ability to be at a significantly higher level than somebody that wasn't naturally gifted in that way, like you could draw better than most people.
Well, like I can't draw, but I've always heard that drawing is not a natural talent. It's something that you learn to do. And so they're like, you can learn how to draw, but naturally I am extremely clumsy and very stiff and you people really don't know me that well. I'm just very much a klutz. So it's like for me to draw, it's a very awkward sensation. It doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
So I could teach myself how to do it. I'd have to put a lot of work into doing it, but I don't have that, natural flow of doing it. Whereas like some people already feel that kind of natural sense of even holding a pen and paper, or whatever, and putting it in, into work. Or, they're not clumsy like I am. And So it's like, but that doesn't mean that they don't still have their own challenges that they go through because, right. Figuring out different styles and comparing, trying to do different things. I mean, of course, it all takes work. It's not easy, so.
Well, it can actually give a lot of people, like, anxiety.
Yeah. The pressure.
Yeah.
Right, because if you're
especially, like, people with OCD and stuff like that.
Well, I understand that. I understand that.
But it's like, people that are autistic on the spectrum.
Yeah.
They tend to gravitate towards other areas of expression, like music and art.
Right.
Well, music is art, but what
the arts. Yeah.
Yeah, they tend to excel better at that,
right,
than other people,
right.
because their perception is different. They can see it differently, and one person that's autistic might be really good at playing the piano, and then another person might be really good at doing sketches or painting.
And their perception of it wouldn't be the same
right.
if they weren't autistic. If they didn't already see the world differently because of what they already go through. And so that doesn't make sense. So I don't know. So it's like they're both but then they also spend hours not just doing the things but like perfecting the things. So it's like, yes, they're naturally good at it because of something that happened in their nature. However, due to their nurture and being able to put the time and the work into that thing, they're even better. So
yeah, I guess naturally good at things isn't really the right things to say. Probably more like naturally drawn to.
I think it's something. I mean, I think saying that you're a natural, because people do say that, it is a very. I think people understand what you mean when you say it. So I don't think it's an incorrect term. But you're right. It's probably not the right way to say it. Somebody told me the other day the phrase you can't have your cake and eat it too is actually backwards. The correct way to say it would be you can't eat your cake and have it too. Because you can have your cake, and if you have your cake, you can eat it. But if you eat your cake, then you don't have your cake later to eat it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, that was really... it just reminded me of that.
So why is it said the opposite way, I wonder?
That's just how people say it. I don't know. Everybody knows what you mean, though, when you say it, right? So that was the point.
Yeah, there's other stuff like that I can't think of.
Yeah, we were filming, and they were talking about it. And I'm just like, you know what? I was like, listen, I'm going to have the cake, and I'm going to eat it because I'm fat, and I like cake, so...
and I can eat it and have
I'm
it, because I'll just go get another one.
Right, I'll just go get another one, whatever. Anyway, all right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up this week's discussion here. Look at us. Well, our long episodes. We'll just get carried away. We're too good at this. Anyway, but yeah, let us know what you guys think. If you have anything that you want to add to the conversation, or, of course, we're still taking suggestions on topics, because not that we're running out of ideas. We're just both very forgetful people, so...
we have that jar. We just don't use it anymore.
Like I remember I said earlier, we should do one about ethics, but I don't remember... Oh, twins! We're going to... put it in the notes right now. The Amish. All right, guys. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.